Final seconds of the game, a chance to score, and the chance has gone begging. If your business's commerce platform keeps missing the target on golden opportunities, get the MVP you deserve. Get Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're a garage entrepreneur or IPO ready, Shopify is the only tool that you need to start, run, and grow your business without the struggle. Shopify puts you in control of every sales channel. So whether you're selling signed football boots from Shopify's in-person POS system, or you're vending vintage shirts on Shopify's all-in-one e-commerce platform, you are covered. And once you've reached your audience, Shopify has the internet's best converting checkout to help you turn them from browsers to buyers. What I love about Shopify is how, no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control and take your business to the next level. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is truly a global force, powering Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across over 170 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to take your business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/ranks.
Hello, this is international football commentator Derek Ray, and you're listening to the Ranks FC podcast.
Hello, Rank Squad, and welcome to Ranks FC. It's your favourite transatlantic football podcast, back again for another week. My name's Jack Collins, and I'll be your host today. And joining me across the water in San Diego, Mr. Dean Jones. How you doing, mate?
Hello, mate. Yeah, I'm very good. I'm especially good, Jack, because it's your ranking this week. And I feel a bit bad about it, because when it comes to this pod, you basically do everything, right? You host it, you produce it, you sort out guests, you pay the bills, you do everything. And I just turn up basically when you tell me to and do like rankings or talk about transfers. So I appreciate you for even putting up with me. But today, you proposed that this show, along with a couple of others, I thought, do you know what? This one just jumped at me. I thought I really, really like it. But I don't think I can do it. I think this is a Jack Collins production. So it is basically the Jack Collins show today. And I think it's a really good hook. I think it's a good show because it's the sort of thing that everybody can then take into the workplace or take into school or take to the pub and have an informed opinion when you start chatting about who the best team around is right now. Like, this is what Ranks is all about. Like, this is about like carrying on normal conversations that you have in day-to-day life with your mates, but giving you some fuel and ammunition to win those arguments.
Yeah, I mean, look, it would be a very, very boring show if it was just me for 4 hours a week yabbering on. So I think
4 hours a show, I reckon you would be doing, mate. I don't think you would keep it to an hour.
Someone needs to shut me up. So it's important. You'll have different roles here. I'd have a one solo show a week. I think that is more than enough. So I think, we take things as they come. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I mean, the way we're going to start things off, though, is with Things We Love. Came back last week. I've been loving Things We Love again. It's great to have it back in the rotation. Sometimes there's no space for it, but I feel in the last couple of rankings there's been space to talk about it. So let's get into Things We Love. Dean, what you got for me?
Oh dear. I love that Messi's out of MLS Cup. Is that okay that I love that?
Yeah, I think you can always choose an underdog, right? And actually this Inter Miami side felt so heavily overpowered that it's okay to root against them, I think. And that doesn't mean there's any disrespect to the great man, but it's cool to want an underdog to win. And I mean, nobody on earth picked Atlanta United beating this Inter Miami side. Now, actually, they have a pretty good record against them at home, but like on the last day, on decision day, I thought it was a very, very slim chance that Atlanta were even in the playoffs. And now they're in a conference semi-final, having knocked out Inter Miami, who were favourites to go and win the whole thing. So, yeah, I think you can definitely love the underdog story of Inter Miami being out and then somewhat weirdly still playing the fireworks above the stadium after they
that
lost.
was bizarre. Yeah, they had to get rid of him still. That's how confident they were going to win. They had fireworks set to go on full time and just did it anyway. But look, Inter Miami were favourites. I mean, they haven't been great all season, but they did win the Supporters' Shield. They have got Messi lining up
They
in
did
this.
break the points record, man.
They broke the points record. Lining up for this game, it wasn't just Messi. They had Suarez playing. They had Jordi Alba playing. Busquets was on the bench. But there was not many reasons you could find for why they would lose this game, especially when they go 1-0 up after 17 minutes. You're like, okay, like this is going to go the way we all expect. But by 21 minutes, they're 2-1 down. And you're like, what? There's a disallowed goal in there before Messi eventually does equalise with a header on 65 minutes. But Atlanta just have this like really strong mentality that they showed in this game, and this grit and this determination, and an unbelievable goalkeeper.
Nothing to lose, right?
Nothing to lose, yeah. That's kind of what they played like. Yeah, that's true. And Brad Guzan made sure they didn't lose because he had a hell of a game. And Inter Miami are out of MLS Cup, and Messi, who's won La Liga and Liga and the Champions League and the World Cup and a Ballon d'Or, has now had 2 seasons in America and can't win the championship. So he's got one more go at this, mate. Probably, unless he extends.
It was pretty exciting, right? Like I think across the board, the postseason's been lots of fun. And we've had 2 major shocks already. The Red Bulls dumped out Columbus Crew, who were obviously reigning champions, and I think for most people, second favourites to go and win it. The 2 teams who you'd have got the shortest odds on at the start of this postseason are both out in what is effectively the first round, exclude the wild card, but in the first round, both those teams are out. And you can talk about the best of 3 format and all of that, but ultimately, it's served up some really, really intriguing contests here. It served us up a Hudson River derby in one of the Eastern Conference semifinals. There's a relatively strong chance it serves us up El Tráfico in the Western Conference final. And there's this real opportunity now for someone from the East to go and make a statement when nobody thought that was going to be possible. Cincinnati out as well. So we've got the teams who are ranked 9th, 4th, 5th, and 7th, I think, in these semifinals, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, look, kudos to you. I mean, in our preview coming into the season, we're talking about Inter Miami and how they were overwhelming favourites. And we just weren't convinced anyway about the fact that just because you have these aging superstars, that means you win it. But you were like, I think Orlando have a better season than them. And there was definitely a stage not so long ago where I was like, yeah, that's looking dead.
Yeah, it's a bad prediction actually in that one.
It did look at one point in the season like that wouldn't pay off. But Orlando are still in it, and Inter Miami are gone. In fact, they would even be playing each other right now if Miami would have got through that game.
That would have been a Florida derby as well, which would have been pretty cool. Mm-hmm. But there is also this kind of element with it that what makes a better season, if they get to MLS Cup and Inter Miami won the Supporters' Shield and ended up breaking the points record. They've clinched that place in the Club World Cup for better or for worse, and we can all have our own opinions on that whole shebang. But I do think it's interesting that we're kind of sitting at a place now where what would make it? Do they have to win MLS Cup to have a better season than Inter Miami? I would say probably yes. But they now, I would say, are the best team left in the East, on paper at the very least. Yeah. I mean, this has not been played out on paper, which is why we're in the situation that we're in. But I think there's a pretty good chance that we end up with Orlando in an MLS Cup final. And that is going to look real good if that one comes through. I
can't claim to know any Orlando City fans, but I bet they're loving this, and they will be saying, well, we've had a better season than you. We're still in it. We can still win it. You can't. So they won't care about all the other stuff that's gone before. And there's obviously this weird thing as well where Inter Miami clinched a place at the Club World Cup by winning the Supporters' Shield. And people are like, well, it's rigged because that just made sure that Messi's in it. It should be the people that win MLS Cup. I'm still not entirely sure where I stand on that because basically they have won the league, which is, they have
it
won
works
the
kind
league,
of everywhere else, right?
which works everywhere else. But it's like, but that's not the case in America because that's not what your format is. Like, you want to be different, then you should be judged differently. So that's a different debate for another day, but that is a bit strange. And obviously, beneath all of this, Jack, my last season supporting LAFC, it's
looking good.
I'm going to be switching teams at the end of the season, which is going to be weird, but it has to happen. I'm afraid it's been decided. I won't be LAFC anymore. I will be San Diego FC.
I mean, you do live there. I can get on board with this.
Yeah, I'm in the club shop most days with my children. They love it in there. Dylan went in and bought one of those mini MLS balls yesterday, actually, and Reese bought some sort of San Diego. It's like what teachers have to hold on to their like past that they like clip onto like
a lanyard.
It's a lanyard, yeah, that you like can clip your card onto. And his teacher has one at school, so he saw it. So it has a San Diego FC, one of those, which
fantastic,
absolutely bizarre. But yeah, so we're starting to stack up on the San Diego FC merch. So yeah, my last, well, every game could be my last game supporting LAFC, couldn't it? So
well, they're going to have home advantage from here on in. So it's going to be very interesting to see if LAFC go and win that. I mean, they ground through this game against the Caps and they did what they needed to do, but they weren't brilliant. And I think it's going to be interesting seeing how they carry on, especially with the Sounders next. And that has become such a big game in the West because they're the two teams that have been scrapping it out for the last couple of years.
And if LAFC do get to the final, they're now at home, right?
Yes.
So that's big too. That is big. So that they would be hosting at BMO Stadium. And I'm not going to claim to not be. I will go to that game and support them like I'm a lifelong fan who's going to support them forevermore, I think.
I mean, if it's like one and done, isn't it? Like last time at BMO. Absolutely. 100%. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. So we'll see how things go. I mean, I just want to take it on briefly before we move on to the main segment and just talk briefly about Fiorentina. They won again at the weekend, 3-1 against Verona. Moise Kean got a hat trick.
He's playing so well, mate.
He's playing so well. Fiorentina are third in Serie A, right? And today we're going to be talking about a couple of Serie A teams. Fiorentina, sadly, are not going to make that list. But I did want to shout them out because after what was a really sticky, slow start to the season under Rafael Palladino, they have absolutely started to cook. Now, they lost in the Conference League with a much changed team, and you can kind of make of that what you will. But in Serie A, they have been absolutely flying. So their last 5 games, a 3-1 win over Verona, 1-0 win over Torino, 1-0 win over Genoa, a 5-1 win over Roma, and a 6-0 win over Lecce. They are scoring goals for fun. They have this real balance to the side that has taken a while to get going. Palladino kind of wanted to come in and import his 3 at the back system. It didn't work. That maybe that's something that we will talk about Premier League at some point. But Palladino had always played with a 3 at the back and he's shifted that, gone to a 4. He's brought in some youngsters here who have really stepped up. We're seeing the likes of Eduardo Bova, who came in from Roma in the summer, somewhat reluctantly, we should probably add, really start to look the business in this midfield. You've seen it. Adley looks excellent. Ricardo Sotil, who has been in and out of this side for about 4 years at this point, has really started to make a way for himself in terms of cutting down that left wing. And his link up with Moise Kean, I think, is really interesting. Beltran, who came in as the number 9 replacement for Artur Cabral, who went off to Benfica at the time, has started playing as a number 10. He looks absolutely brilliant. Colpani's in there as well. And there are still some big players to come back into this side as well, which is even more exciting. So I think that obviously when Gudmundsson comes back, it's going to be intriguing to see how he slots into this side when they're playing this well. Amir Richardson can't get into the side at the moment. Rolando Mandragora was dropped at the weekend. We've seen some big performances and some big calls from Palladino, but they look unbelievable, mate. And look, I don't think that Fiorentina are still going to be in a Champions League spot at the end of the season. But right now, they are absolutely cooking and I'm loving it.
Mate, there was a game that Fiorentina played a few weeks back against Roma, which I'm sure you remember. And I had the game on in the lounge, and I was only loosely, I wasn't really watching it closely. But I kept glancing up and watched it for a minute or two and then carried on with my work. And suddenly, Fiorentina score this opening goal against Roma. And like the setup play and the finish are just unbelievable. So I'm like, hold on, who is this number 20 for Fiorentina? Is this like a kid that is just emerging? Who? I couldn't think who it would be. And I was like, oh, it's Moise Kean. Like, what? Like, what is this interplay that he's got? And what is this great finish he's got? Like, and so I paid much more attention to the rest of the game to like study how he was actually playing. And I've had an eye on him ever since. And it's great to see him playing at that level. It really is. Like, I'm really, really pleased, not just for him, but also for Fiorentina that they're getting this tune out of him.
I mean, 11 goals in 14 games in all competitions. It's pretty stunning as a return, right? But more than that, I think that for a while now, we've been crying out for him to have a home. The talent's always been there, right? At this point, we've been looking at him and he feels like he's been around for absolutely ever, right? And he's still just kicking around. He's still, 24 years old? So there's still so much of this career to come. And I'm really, really hopeful that he has finally landed somewhere where he feels loved, where he feels wanted, where he's going to be the main man. And he also has a level of seniority that he probably couldn't have had earlier in his career.
Yeah.
And I think all of that is playing into what he's seeing here. You're seeing him be the guy for Fiorentina. He's the man they look to. And suddenly this talent is pouring out of him. The talent's always been there, but always kind of felt a bit, he gets 10 minutes off the bench here, or he starts a cup game and then he comes back onto the bench for the next game. And wherever he's gone, that's always felt like it was kind of holding him back a little bit.
Yeah.
And suddenly you have this explosion onto the scene. Like you say, I'm really glad he's found a home. I'm really glad we're starting to see this talent. I really just hope he sticks about, because I think what we've seen from him so far here, and you know what Fiorentina are like in terms of a big offer will come in and they'll feel like they have to sell in terms of balancing the books and all of those things. But with him, you wouldn't be surprised to see a big offer come in next summer if he has a season like this and continues, right?
Yeah.
But I really do hope that he just finds a space and goes, no, you know what? I am now happy here. And if that means that he can continue kind of battling on and, taking Fiorentina higher, maybe it's not the Conference League next year, maybe it's a Europa League spot. Maybe they can compete again in the Cups. I think it'll be very interesting to see how far this team can go if they can keep it together, because there's a lot of very, very talented young players in the mix here right now.
Yeah, absolutely there is. Yeah, well done for flagging that up, mate.
100%. All right, after the break, we're going to be talking about the best teams in Europe this year. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to Ranks FC. And yes, I'm hosting this part because Jack Collins is the man with all the knowledge as we rank the best teams in Europe so far this season. Now, Jack, I'm interested to know what the parameters are here. Is it as simple as you've gone through the top teams and picked all the teams at the top of the league, or is it run a bit deeper than that with some real insight?
So there are some teams, obviously, who are not top of their leagues, but they are mostly teams who are winning their divisions. One of the things I kind of set out as the low bar was I think a team has to have exceeded or matched expectations in order to be included.
Okay.
So whilst you could argue that City or Arsenal, for example, who aren't going to be in this ranking, or Inter, who also miss out, could be in here and might be better than some of these teams, I think that all three of those clubs, maybe Inter the least, but all three of those clubs would suggest that currently they feel like they're underperforming expectations, that they don't feel that this season has been a success so far, like as a flat kind of rule. And I think that for all of these 7 teams that I've included, every single one of them would consider the season an unprecedented success so far. So that's one of the kind of baseline rules. And then I've gone through each of them and I've scored them out of 10 on 4 different topics. So style, entertainment kind of value is one of them, results, one of them, trophy potential, one of them, and then sort of a difficulty factor as well, with not just the games that they face, but also in terms of the leagues they're in and the divisions they're in as well. So I've ranked them all out of 10 on each of those. So everyone has a score out of 40. And then I think we can kind of talk about them a little bit from that perspective. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's good, mate. I like this system that we've got where we're setting boundaries. We've got little listings of how we're going to rank teams. Like, we're really doing our homework at the moment, mate. We've stepped up our game.
Re-stepped it up. It felt like a real moment for ranks. We've re-engaged the engines, as it gets it. Next week will be absolute nonsense, so it won't last long. But you know how it goes.
We've got to have that mixture. That's what ranks is all about. Where do you want to start then, mate?
Well, let's start at 7, where I have put PSV Eindhoven, who I've given 31 points out of 40. Now, they are top of the Dutch league by a fair margin, and they're playing some really, really good football. They've had an immense amount of blowaway games where they've really put teams to the sword. But I think where PSV have been let down a little bit is that actually their big games, they've not really delivered too much so far this season. So I've given them an 8 for entertainment, an 8.5 for results because they have still won 12 of their 16 games. I've given their trophy potential a 9 because I think it's almost a certainty that they go on and they win the Eredivisie.
Yep.
But their difficulty factor's down a little bit at 6 because of the league that they play in,
Sure.
and also because I've kind of factored the teams they've played and where they've fitted into that so far into the difficulty factor. So if they've not delivered in the big games, they're doing worse in that category. So PSV's record: 16 games, won 12, drawn 2, lost 2. They've scored 47 goals and conceded just 14. But in their big games, which mostly are Champions League games, they lost 3-1 to Juventus. They drew 1-1 with Sporting, which I think is a pretty good result. They drew 1-1 with PSG, which is also a pretty good result.
Yeah.
But they lost 3-2 to Ajax, the only game they've lost so far in the Eredivisie. And that feels like a big one because whilst Ajax are on the way back and they definitely feel like far more of formidable force than they were last season, I think that PSV will have felt that this was one of those years that they could really step on their neck and really drive it home that they were now the dominant force in Dutch football. And they failed to do that in the first meeting between the two this season. So I like this PSV team. I have a lot of fun watching them. I think that Malik Tillman is an absolutely exceptional footballer. And there's a lot of players in this side who are really, really, really fun to watch. And when they get going, they're amazing. The way that they blew out Girona in the Champions League was very, very impressive. I've been really enjoying Ryan Flamingo coming in and playing at centre-back, not just because he might have the best name in football, but also because he feels like he's slotted in there. And he was sort of a halfway house between a central defensive midfielder and a centre-back coming through. And I wasn't sure which kind of way he was going to end up. At the moment, he's playing in that centre-back role and he looks very, very sharp in there. The midfield, I think, is one of the most fun in world football. Tillman playing sort of as the most advanced of the three. Goose Till in there and Ismail Saibari, who I love as a footballer. And then there's some sort of random people popping up here and there. Noah Lang having a bit of a return season. He made that move from Club Brugge last year to PSV, but it did feel like it took a while for him to get going. Ricardo Pepe's playing some really interesting football at the moment. They've also signed Ivan Perisic, which kind of just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And he's sort of popped up and started to really make his impact felt, I think, in this team. So there's a lot to like about this PSV team. They're a lot of fun to watch. I think they're going to go on and win the league. And I think that people will be relatively happy with the way that they've started this season, especially considering the way that they've just blown through teams in the Eredivisie. But they haven't quite set the Champions League on fire. I would say that actually of those results in the Champions League, obviously it's a very credible win against Girona. And then you come back to the other results. The draw against Sporting looks better and better with every other result that we talk about. And the 1-1 draw with PSG was, actually I thought that they were probably the better side for a lot period of that game, in terms of the way that they bounced off things and made things happen. The loss to Juve, fine, whatever. But I think they're going to be fine. I think we'll see them in the latter stages of the Champions League. And I don't think the expectation is there necessarily for them to go and be in the quarterfinal, semi-finals. I think the expectation is for them to 100% make it through the league stage. And I think the expectation is for them to go and win the league at a canter again. And so far, so good. But I do think they probably end up bottom of this ranking.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Noah Lang, mate. I love Noah Lang. He's been mooted to the Premier League for a little while now, and clubs like Arsenal have had an eye on him. It's just convincing people that he can do it regularly. But when he is on, that lad is really on. Bit of American interest there, as you say, like with Tillman and Pepe. So this is a team that our
So
US
Junior
gang.
Dest as well, obviously
Yeah,
injured at
yeah.
the moment, but also Richie Ledesma, who started the season very much in this team, but has sort of dropped out as Rick Karsdorp's taken the spot back.
Yeah, and their best player, Herving Lozano, obviously joining San Diego FC, so he's just having to phase himself out.
100%, 100%. But yeah, shouts out to PSV. I think they started the season, really, really well and with the best extents, but probably haven't clocked up enough big results for them to go any
Yeah,
higher
that's fair.
up this ranking. On the same marks, but above them in the ranking, I have Napoli, who we also have on 31.
Oh, okay.
So Napoli, I think for style entertainment, I gave them a 7. Results, given them a 9. Trophy potential, an 8. And difficulty factor 7. Now, it's a little bit harder to judge Napoli because they're not in European competition, right?
Yep.
And so whilst their start to the Serie A season has been really hot, and after that opening day loss, they've really turned it around under Conte and they look pretty sharp. I do think it's more tricky to analyze exactly where they are because of the lack of really big games. And you kind of look at those big games that they have played in the league. 0-0 draw with Juventus, obviously a 1-1 draw with Inter at the weekend. They lost 3-0 to Atalanta, and they beat a relatively poor Milan 2-0. So it's quite hard to... I'm quite excited about this Conte side. I'm quite excited about what he's doing. I'm really enjoying watching Scott McTominay playing that sort of number 10 role behind Romelu Lukaku. The resurgence of Lukaku is obviously joyful in itself. I enjoy that Kvara has come into this team and started to look a bit like his old self again. There's a lot of fun to be had here. And especially when you go to what's going on at the back. Buongiorno, I think, has been a revelation. He's going to continue to be one of the best defenders in Italy. But Napoli are there and they're winning the league. And yet I find it quite hard to judge them because actually quite a lot of these games which you look at here haven't been all that convincing. The Milan win was fine, but Milan are all over the place. So you kind of have to take that with a pinch of salt. They've had some really impressive victories, but against teams lower down in the table. And actually the games where they've had to play against, teams of a similar tier, this is going to become a thing. It's going to become a bit of a factor here, I think, because when you talk about the big results that define your season, I actually think that's something that I'm probably putting more stock into than most people perhaps would. Napoli have only scored 19 goals in their 12 games. They are not a free scoring unit. They've been very, very good defensively, only conceded 9 in 12. But I think considering that they haven't had that kind of European commitment to deal with, some of these results against the bigger sides around them, you would have expected them to really kind of hammer home on. Now, they're probably the side here that's improved the most from where they were last year, and that deserves major credit. And Conte deserves credit for turning this around so quickly. But I think I'd struggle to put them any higher right now just because we haven't necessarily seen it yet against top quality opposition.
Yeah, like, is this sustainable? They are top of the league, yeah, but there's only 2 points between them and Juventus in 6th. Like, that's how close Serie A is this season. If you're not keeping an eye on it, it's going to be...
It's amazing.
It's great. Like, it's so amazing how the top 6 are separated by 2 points. That is amazing. Napoli have lost 2 games this season. Juventus are unbeaten and they're 6th. And you've got a couple of teams, Inter and Fiorentina, have only lost 1. And then, as you say, like, Napoli have scored 19 goals. All the other teams in the top 6 have scored more goals than them. So, yes, like, it is impressive that they are there, but I think you're right to raise concerns about whether they are the best team around right now.
For what it's worth, like, I think it is sustainable. And actually, it's one of those things where because they're not playing in European competition, it has, it's a double-edged sword, right? They're going to be fresher in the back end of this season. They won't need to rotate as much. I don't know whether that leaves them. It's not me saying here that Napoli are going to win the league, but I think they definitely have a shot. And I think that for me, it's probably between Napoli and Inter, with Atalanta sort of lurking in the background as that kind of wild card shot. So I'm not saying that they're not going to go on and make this sustainable. I'm just waiting to see them really, beat a really big name or a team around them, even if that's Fiorentina, considering the start they've had, or a Lazio, for example. I kind of just need that result to see it so I can then be like, okay, I believe that Napoli are going to have the kind of guts to get over the line when it comes to those big results. They've been good against Juventus and Inter, and they've gone bar for bar with them both, but neither of those sides are on this list. So it does come to that kind of level where you're like, what have you going to show me that's going to kind of push you upwards? Yeah. And right now, I don't think we've quite seen that kind of statement result from Napoli that really does cement them as, maybe title favourites at this point.
Yeah, fair enough, mate. So where are we heading next?
Off to Germany. Because at 5th, I have Bayern Munich.
Oh, this is lower than I thought.
32 points on the scale, one above Napoli and PSV. Style entertainment, I've given them a 7. Results, 8. Trophy potential, 9. Difficulty factor, 8. Played 16, won 12, drawn 2, lost 2. Goals scored, 52, and goals conceded, 14.
52.
Yeah.
52.
They're great. But, Dean, I have one major concern with Bayern. And I say this kind of, let me be clear. I now think the Bayern are going to win the league. Right, I've kind of come
Can we
to the
just
conclusion.
confirm Harry Kane is finally going to lift a trophy, mate? It's going to happen.
I think that Bayern are now going to win the league. And I've watched a lot of Bayern, and I was talking about this on the Postbox Extra that we released this week, where I was discussing some of the European bits. And
join us on Patreon.
Yeah, join us on Patreon. The link's in the description. You get loads of random content like me chatting about Bayern for 15 minutes. But there is something about them that reminds me a lot of Company's Burnley in the Championship. Right?
You can't do this. You can't compare these two.
I can. They're the best team with the best players, and when they're playing teams worse than them, they're flat track bullies. They absolutely batter teams. They put them to the sword. They open it up. But when they come up against teams that are, in the same kind of bracket, there's not loads to suggest that Bayern are loads better than the teams around them. What's going to get them over the line is their ability to absolutely hammer anybody that they feel is worse than them, right? And I think that you can kind of see that with some of the results this season. Now, that's not to say they can only do that. They ground out a really impressive 1-0 win at the Milan Tour against San Paoli on Friday night. They have that ability to win games that are narrow as well. But when you look at the games that they've played against, opposition you would consider very high caliber, they have a 1-1 draw with Leverkusen. They have a 1-0 loss to Aston Villa. They have a 2-2 draw with Eintracht Frankfurt. They have a 4-1 loss to Barcelona and a very narrow 1-0 win over Benfica. The only exception to this rule is a very, very impressive 4-0 win over Stuttgart. But Stuttgart have been really weirdly bad in the Bundesliga at the start of the season, despite being excellent in the Champions League. So I'm not 100% sure what to make of that. I think that is going to be enough for Bayern to get over the line, especially with Leverkusen floundering a little bit, with Dortmund losing, with Leipzig dropping points in the last couple of games. I think it's going to be more than enough for Bayern to get over the line. And to be honest, I'm okay with this from Company's perspective. He's basically gone in and he's doing what he's been told to do. What did he need to do to win over this Bayern fan base and the Bayern hierarchy this summer? We needed to win the league back. That's the first and foremost task that was sat on Vincent Company's desk. And I think he's going to achieve that. He's not been brought in to go and win the Champions League in his first season, I don't think. That would be a wild appointment to be like, yeah, we're going to bring in basically a rookie manager and be like, go and win the Champions League. That's what we're going to judge you against as a bar. So his bar is definitely coming in and winning the Bundesliga. And I think they're going to get there. But I still am completely not convinced that Bayern can do it yet against top class opposition. I do think though, that with all that said, Company will get there. I think Company will get there. He's a smart geezer. He's obviously done a lot of work in terms of his managerial career. He does a lot of studying of opposition. He will be learning from each of these knocks that he gets from these big games. But I don't think he's there yet, and that's why I have Bayern down in 5th.
Yeah, look, they are going to win the league. Almost certain of that this time around. And I think, when you consider the league table, like you were speaking about there, like what really jumped out at me when I was looking through the stats in the Bundesliga so far this season, like obviously like the goals they're scoring is outrageous, but the fact Bayern Munich in first place have scored 33 goals and second placed RB Leipzig have scored 15, like that That's so vast. And it's not just because of Harry Kane. Obviously, Harry Kane is having another really good season. He's proved to be a great signing. But it's the players that you've got around Harry Kane, like the wide options. Elise since coming in. Leroy Sané having a bit of a renaissance. Kingsley Coman having a good season when he's getting his opportunities. Serge Gnabry as an option. Like, to have those four. So it's not only the service they would give to Kane, it's that you still see Kane, like we've seen before in English football, he still drops off and he'll play those threaded balls through because they've got so much zip about them to go in behind the back line. I just can't see anybody this time stopping this team. And it'll be a big accomplishment for Vincent Kompany. So yeah, I am a little bit surprised that they are quite this low.
Just out of interest, who would you have had at 7, 6, and 5? And we can kind of update the rankings as we go along.
Well, the way how you've got them so far, I've been, apart from Bayern, like the other two, I'm fine with. So I don't know who I'd have had 5. I need to see who you've got above them before we get to that point.
Okay.
But yeah, I think 7 and 6 we're fine.
We'll take a look at it in a minute, but okay. I think there's something similar there with the way that I've ranked Bayern and Napoli, in that I'm yet to see them really deliver in the big games that I need them to actually show me before it kind of comes through, right? I need them to go and blow away a genuine title contender, or like put in a really, actually blow away is not right, but like a really comprehensive 2-0 win against the Leverkusen, and I'm like Bayern are higher up this list.
Well, coming up after the international break, they've got PSG in the Champions League, then they've got Dortmund in the Bundesliga, and then they've got Leverkusen in the Cup. So those 3 games then should hopefully prove more convincing to you.
Yeah, and I hope so. I mean, they haven't conceded a goal in their last 5, so we'll see how we get on.
You're a harsh judge.
Yeah, I am, but I think that considering where they were and considering the amount of talent in that side, Bayern are pretty much where I expect them to be in the Bundesliga. And yes, there's been a drop-off around them, and they're well below where I expect them to be in the Champions League. So they're still up there in the conversation because of what they're doing domestically. But actually, it doesn't look great when the team that they beat 9-2 on the first day of the Champions League are above them in the table, right? That doesn't look great for anything in that top competition. League, So I think that's why I've got them a little bit lower, which takes us on to number 4, which is where I've put Atalanta. Also on 32 points. Style entertainment, giving them a 9. Results, giving them an 8. Trophy potential, giving them a 7, which is lower than anybody else so far in this list, because I think that there's too many variables going on there. And a difficulty factor, I'm going to give them an 8, which I've given 1 above Napoli because they have had those Champions League games and because they've had some big results. Now, it's incredible that Atalanta are here, because their start to the season was absolutely dreadful, right? So they lost in the Super Cup to Real Madrid. And then in their first big game in the season, they lose 4-0 to Inter. And you're like, wow, this team are all over the place. And we know the players that are either missing or have left the club, in the Tejan Koopmeiners, who was such a crucial part of that team last year, and Scamacca, who was the number 9 for this Atalanta side, both left or were injured in the summer, and therefore are not going to be playing a part in this campaign. That is a big, big loss to the spine of this football team. And since then, they have completely and utterly turned it around. And what we're seeing in the other games here is that, there's that 0-0 draw with Arsenal where they miss a penalty and probably should win the game. I thought they were the better team in that game. They win 3-2 at Fiorentina early on, which is one of the ones they kind of turn around quite sharply. And then last weekend, they go and beat Napoli 3-0. And the game probably wasn't a 3-0, but the way that Atalanta burst out of the blocks and put this Napoli side, who had been, pretty much just swatting away everyone in their path, to the sword, made everybody sit up, I think, and take notice. And so you come to this point here. They've played 16, won 10, drawn 3, lost 3, scored 36 goals. No one scored more goals than Atalanta in Serie A this season. They're second, 1 point off Napoli. But I actually think if you looked at these two teams' fan bases and you asked them who's the happier right now, I think you'd be surprised if it wasn't Atalanta, right? I think you'd be surprised considering some of the results they've had in the last month. And yes, recency bias comes into this, right? Of course it does, because the way that they have bounced back from that slow start to the season to basically become this feared force, to leapfrog some of the behemoths in this league and get to the point that they are in this league table, to the point where we're talking about them as genuine Scudetto contenders, to the point where if anyone gets drawn against Atalanta in the playoffs of the Champions League, let's assume they don't get into the top 8. But if anybody gets drawn against them, no one is going to want that game. Absolutely nobody is going to want to play Atalanta because we know the capabilities they have. The attacking core here is so deep and so varied. The amount of different options they can call on to make things happen. And in Gasperini, they have one of the great chess masters of not just the Italian game, but I think the European game right now. That Europa League trophy and maybe the little hangover from actually winning that and getting some silverware for the first time in a long, long time. Didn't help at the start of the season, but at one point it looked like Lookman's head was being turned. They bring in Retegui. They play a completely different type of striker. The way that they have adapted to playing him in, the way that they occasionally drop him out of the side to confuse people, like in that Napoli game, and Napoli didn't have a clue. They were like, hang on, where's the league's top scorer? You've left him on the bench. And he comes on and scores in the 90th minute to wrap things off because Lookman has terrorized you in behind. And they have Lazar Samardzic in there. De Ketelaere looks the absolute business. There's so much to like about this Atalanta side. And I think that as they go through this season, with the depth that they have, Zaniolo got on the score sheet for the first time in the Champions League last week since coming back on loan from Galatasaray. Their recent form and the way they have shot up this table and the way that they have started to put it all together again earlier on, I think they're right up there.
Yeah, see, I've completely got to trust your judgment here because I just don't watch enough of Atalanta, so I automatically would have swapped them with Bayern Munich. But that's not fair. I also
do have the two on the same exact points from my little scoring system, so this was just kind of personal judgment, really.
But my opinion is invalid because I haven't watched nowhere near as much of the two teams. I watch Bayern Munich most weeks, whereas Atalanta I might have watched 2 or 3 times across this season so far. So, your wisdom counts for a lot here.
The great entertainers of the Italian game right now. So I'm loving that.
Yeah, I mean, look at those last 5 games, mate, and that's hard to argue with.
Yeah, they're just absolutely the business, and I love watching them. I think that everybody is delighted that they're back in this and back doing it again, and what they've managed to pull out of here in the kind of 4th era of Gasperini, really, at Atalanta, to be able to be doing this again. Look, they might not have the longevity, and that's why their trophy potential is down lower than pretty much anybody else's. They might just have too much competition in both the Champions League and in Serie A. But, I mean, I don't think you could have asked for much better a kind of season so far, especially given that they had to start it from, a while further back because they just didn't get out of the blocks at all.
Very good. I'm interested to see who else is coming here. I want to know if they're all traditional, expected big clubs or if somebody else has sneaked in there.
They're not traditional expected big clubs. I'm going to do one more before we take a break and we'll do the top 2 last. But in third is where I have Sporting. On 33 points out of 40. Style entertainment, give them an 8. Results, give them a 9. Trophy potential, give them a 9. And difficulty factor, they're dropped a little bit down to 7 because the Primera is less competitive than, say, Serie A.
I'd have gone 10-10-10-7, I think.
I think they have been absolutely magnificent. So played 15, won 14, drawn 1, lost none. Goals scored 48, goals conceded 7. They're big games. They beat Porto in a 2-0 win in one of the Clásicos in Portugal. They beat Lille 2-0 in the Champions League. 1-1 draw with PSV, really the only blot on their copybook. So I had to put it in. That's the only game that they haven't won this season. And then, of course, Manchester City, that 4-1 win. They also came from 2-0 down to beat Braga 4-2 in Amorim's last game last Friday. Braga are 4th, so they're no mugs, but probably not in quite the same ballpark. Bear in mind, that Lille team has just gone and beaten Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid. Like, these are some very, very impressive results. And the way that they have started this season, like an absolute train, is incredible. Now, this is the last time we're going to have an opportunity, really, to talk about Amorim Sporting, because by the time that we come back from this international break, it'll be João Pereira at the helm, who was a player under Amorim in his final season as a player, and has gone on to manage the basic Sporting's B team, their under-23 team, and then has now been promoted to this senior role. So I'm pretty confident, and I've said this before, that he's going to have that nous. He's been in a lot of, back rooms with Amorim. He understood what he was like as a manager from a playing perspective and then working alongside him as a coach. And I think there will be enough momentum with this Sporting side that he can basically just harness what Amorim has done and roll with it. I can't imagine he's going to try and make wholesale changes in the way that they play football. And with these results, why would you, right? Why would you? It's very difficult to argue with what they've done so far this season. And if this was just absolute domestic dominance, I think that people could make a legitimate argument that the Primera is a far weaker league across the course of it than some others. And that's a fine point to make. But they've taken this into the Champions League as well. They currently sit second in the Champions League table. Now, whether that's sustainable or not is a different question. What the impact of Amorim's leaving is, especially in Europe, I think is yet to be seen. But it's very difficult to argue with what has happened at Sporting through the first, as we say, 15 games of this season and not see it as one of the most unprecedented success stories in Europe, not only domestically, but also in continental competition.
It's kind of iconic what is happening at Sporting right now. Like you see, like the Gyökeres celebration, like the hand gesture across his face that he does. Like there's so much video out there at the moment of like fans. So there's actually a really good thing that Sporting do on their own YouTube channel. It's one of those behind the scenes type things of match day where they like they show the players arriving, they show the fans arriving, and they show all the bits and pieces that you don't normally see. But they do spend a lot of time going around the stands and stuff. And you just notice that so many kids in particular, like doing the Gyökeres celebration and little things like that. Like growing up when you support a team, you need those moments that like live with you forever. This Sporting team is going to live with fans forever. I'm excited for Man United fans that they're getting Amorim, but there is part of you that's like, oh, it's just a shame we couldn't see this through. I hope the vibe doesn't fall off because it's not going to be the same. You will miss him. And obviously there is potential at the end of the season that the team starts to break away. All the talk is of Gyökeres, but I love Hjulmand, mate. I'm obsessed with this player. It's not just the way that he plays in defensive midfield, but as a captain and a leader of Sporting, he's so good. The way that he talks to people, the passion that you can see as a Sporting fan, to see somebody like that get so worked up over every single moment of a game, to see the way that Hjulmand celebrates, the way they all go over to their supporters is obviously like quite a traditional thing anyway, but Hjulmand just seems to like, he gets it and he feels it. And yeah, so there's so many different elements of this team that I think you've got like the icon in the goal scorer. You've got the captain who is a leader and probably has the potential to become a legend if he was to stay there. And then you've got the youthfulness of it too, and like the playful way that they go about their games, but also the commitment and the belief and turnarounds and stuff like that. It's all there. So actually, certainly since all the Amorim talk started, I've watched this team way more. Like I've probably watched most of their games in the last month, but they are just great. Like this is a team of the moment.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. They are that team. And I too am quite sad. Like, again, I'm excited for Amorim and I'm excited for United fans that they're going to see him in action. And look, I really hope this works because I'm a big fan of his and I really don't want to see...
You're going to find it hard, mate, to see Man United return to the greatn't of the past.
I won't if he's at the helm because I think he's brilliant, man. And
United shot in the post.
Well, not quite that much. I might buy a suit. But, you kind of look at those things and I would have really loved to see how far he could have taken this Sporting side in Europe this year. Because I think, obviously, that Man City game, maybe the scoreline's a little bit of a misnomer in terms of City could have been probably out of sight in the first half. But the fact that they came back and won that, the fact that they were able to find a way through that Man City team and do it with such clinical, devastating fashion, I think this Sporting side had the potential to go on and be a real nuisance in Europe this year. And you think back to that, the Benfica side that made the semi-finals a couple of years back. You look back that Ajax side under Ten Hag, which took the kind of Champions League by storm. I really felt like Sporting could be onto one this year, that there was an opportunity, especially with some of the more traditional sides, faltering a little bit. Now, whether they do in the actual knockout stages or not is a different question. But I really felt like this side in particular had the capability to go on and do something really quite special. And it's something that Sporting haven't really had in the Champions League. Porto obviously had it back in 2004 with Mourinho, and Benfica have had a couple of deep runs, but it's not something we've seen from a Sporting side. So I'm a little bit upset that this is not going to be something we see under Amorim. And look, fingers crossed that João Pereira can just kind of harness that and keep everyone going at the same time. But I do think that it's been an incredible start to the season, and I really, really hope that the Sporting can keep going. I don't think there's much more you could have asked for from them at this point. And the only reason that I think that they're third probably is because he's leaving. Like, if he wasn't leaving, I think you could have made a quite compelling case that they should have been at least one place higher in this table.
Yeah, no, fair enough, mate. But that is a cliffhanger, really, for what's to come. Welcome back to Ranked FC. We're into the top 2 of the Jack Collins show as we rank the best teams so far in Europe this season. Jack, you've done a great job so far, apart from putting Bayern Munich too low. Let's see if you can nail the top 2, because Sporting in 3, that one could yet be up for debate.
Yeah, I mean, I think they could have been one space higher. I mean, do you want to go 2 or 1 here? How do you want to play this? It's like, they get to this point at the Ballon d'Or, they just read it out.
Yeah, like, I would just read out 1 and 2, yeah. I'd read out 2 first and then let us know who's won.
Well, at second, I've gone for Barcelona. And top of this pile, I have Liverpool. Barcelona on 33 points out of 40. Liverpool on 34. So for Liverpool, I went for a 9 on style entertainment, 9 on results, 8 for trophy potential, and 8 for difficulty factor. And Barcelona were the same, apart from 1 lower on their results count. So, I mean, you look at the 2 records, they both played 17 games. Liverpool won 15, Barcelona won 14. Liverpool have drawn 1 and lost 1. Barcelona have drawn none, weirdly, and lost 3. Liverpool have scored 39, conceded 10. And Barcelona scored 55 and conceded 17. Big games. Liverpool, 3-0 win against United, 3-1 win against Milan, 2-1 win against Chelsea, 1-0 win against Leipzig, 2-2 draw with Arsenal, 4-0 win over Leverkusen, a 2-0 win over Villa. Barcelona, a few less of the bigger games, but some of the real big names, right? So they had that 2-1 loss to Monaco in the Champions League, which hurts them here. 5-1 win over Villarreal, who I still think are going to be in the top 4 by the end of this season. 4-1 win over Bayern and a 4-0 win over Real Madrid. So some big results for both. Look, I think it's hard to argue Liverpool currently top of the Premier League and the Champions League, considering what expectations were when Arne Slot took over from Jurgen Klopp. And I think there was an expectation that there was going to be a bit of a transition season in a way that was different to maybe a Bayern or a Napoli, though. They didn't have a big transfer market, a lot of new names, not loose signings that maybe raised that expectation again and raised the kind of hopes. This kind of felt at the start of the season to be like, let's see how Liverpool get on. So for them to have played this well over these first 17 games, to have picked up 15 wins, to be sitting pretty at the top of both tables, I think is an absolutely stunning start to life for Arne Slot. And I don't think you could have asked for much more than that. I think when you kind of come to these games and you come to what he's done, seeing them become a little bit calmer and being able to just slow down the pace of games so things don't get out of hand emotionally, being able to ratchet that up in the second half when they need a boost like they did against Brighton last weekend. The variety of ways that Liverpool can score and win games is just absolutely incredible right now. And maybe that's something you would apply to Barcelona as well. Now, obviously, this is coming off the back of a loss to Real Sociedad at the weekend without Lamine Yamal, which did feel like a bit of a blow. They're still 6 points clear at the top of La Liga, and they've been middling, sort of, in the Champions League. Obviously, that loss against Monaco hurt them, but they've bounced back with some massive results. And obviously, that 4-1 win against Bayern, their former bogey team, the team that ghosted them and haunted them and basically left them in the dust in the past, and then backing it up with the win in the Clasico at the Bernabeu. I mean, it was an absolutely incredible week. They probably couldn't have gone much better from a Barcelona perspective. So there's not much between these two. I just think that Liverpool's slightly less here and there start in terms of there's a couple of games in that Barcelona lineup that you're like, not comfortable with the way that played out. Lamine Yamal missed the 2 games in the league that they've lost. They had an early red card in the Monaco game. There are extenuating circumstances, but I do think that in terms of the way that the two sides will look at their openings, that's probably the difference between them, and that's why I've gone for Liverpool ahead of Barcelona right now.
Do you think Liverpool would beat Barcelona right now?
I think it would be a very good game. Let's put it that way. I think that right now you struggle to see a side in Europe that would beat Liverpool, right? The way that they are able to control games, the way that they're able to come back from deficits, they kind of have it all at the moment. Now that, again, none of this means that this is going to be the way it is for the whole season. And it's not to say that Liverpool with injuries or whatever might happen, might end up, looking a little bit worse than they do right now. But on the basis of the evidence that we have in front of us from the season so far, I don't think it is possible to almost have had a better start than what Liverpool have had, considering where they are in both competitions.
Yeah, I mean, it is very close because they're both overachieving based on expectation. They've both overcome doubts that were definitely angled against them as we came into the campaign. At Barcelona, I still think there are elements of their evolution that are underplayed. I know that the offside trap is getting a lot of attention in the last few weeks, but the work that goes into making that work is outstanding, and they really are nailing it. A lot of people talk about Kabasi because of his age and stuff like that, but Inigo Martinez has been amazing, right? So I think that
had a little bit of the wobble at the weekend, but
he did have a wobble at the weekend. But if you look across this season, I just think that
benefit of the doubt.
He's so important to this working, and I think Flick must love having him in there. I think Pedri loves Flick as well. I think that's been a big part of this team. Obviously, getting a tune out of Rafinha has been unexpected but brilliant. Having him one side, Lamine on the other side. And their directness is great, but also the confidence of both too. And it helps, obviously, Lewandowski being among the goals and getting back to, a level we weren't certain we would see again with this regularity, I should probably say. But he's nailing it, and also he's helping bring through those players at a time when Barcelona really need them. So a bit like I was talking about Kane and how he'll drop off. Lewandowski will do that too, right? He'll just drop off the front line and allow the younger players, the faster players, to make those runs in behind. And then you've got players like Marc Casado who are also emerging into what will be household names. So I've been really, really surprised and impressed by the way that Barcelona have gone about it. I don't know if the surprise element is there quite as much with Liverpool because they basically got the team that we already knew, and it was just a case of how will Slot cope with them. Obviously, the one position that he really wanted and needed to be filled in the summer transfer market, they didn't do. So fair play to him for getting what he's got out of Gravenberch. That's been great, and that's been hugely important. And he's obviously the calmness that we always talk about and things like that. I actually kind of feel like what Flick's done with Barcelona is more impressive.
Maybe in terms of, but that's probably a slightly different ranking.
It's a different ranking. That's what I was about to say. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that Barcelona are the best team right now. I'm more impressed with what he's done, but I think if they came up against each other, Liverpool would probably win. I think you're right. And I think that's probably the best way to judge who the best team is right now. It's not necessarily about league standing because you've got these 4 little categories that you're comparing them in. But Liverpool have been outstanding, and without being, I say outstanding, it hasn't always been outstanding.
This is the thing. I think Liverpool have more gears. And that's actually maybe the scary thing for everybody else, is that I think Liverpool have been this good and I don't think they've hit top gear yet.
Yeah.
I think that there is more to come from this Liverpool side. And actually, when you think about what Slott's done with a couple of other players as well, obviously Gravenberch is the one that takes the headlines because he wasn't in the side, basically, or in and out of the side very much at the end of Klopp's reign. And he has become kind of a mainstay and really the heart of what's going on here. But also, I think if you look at what's happened with Konate and the confidence he is now inspiring at the back, there are shouts that Konate might be the best defender in the Premier League. Now, whether those are overblown or not is a different question, but he wasn't in those conversations last year. I think when you look at what's happened with Luis Diaz and the push between him and Cody Gakpo for that left-hand side, the goals and the clinicality that we've seen from Luis Diaz without necessarily taking away that impish nature and his ability to inspire and create is amazing. Mohamed Salah's playing a slightly different role now, and we're still seeing some absolute brilliance from him. There's so much to like about what's going on with this Liverpool side. And I do think that in a minor way, Slott's almost improved 3 or 4 key cogs in this team. And that's what's kind of raised everybody else's level as well. So I think that the job that he's doing is just as impressive. And I just think that Liverpool's start has been slightly better across the board than Barcelona's.
Do you want a hot take?
Go on.
I don't think Liverpool or Barcelona win their leagues.
Oh, okay, good. That's a really hot take. That's a really hot take.
I'm genuine about that.
I also think that there's a chance that the Inter, quite a high chance, that Inter go on and win the league. Although, again, I think the reason we talk about these teams, and one of the reasons I put out that caveat at the start that you have to be overperforming or at least matching expectations to be in this ranking, was because actually you could make that argument, and I think it's an interesting one to be like, would each of these teams beat the one below them? Yeah. Well, I think Inter and Man City would both probably beat PSV. I think Arsenal would probably beat PSV. But I don't think any of those teams are matching or exceeding expectations so far.
Yep.
And I think, therefore, they can't really go in this best teams in Europe so far list because of that. So that's where I kind of came from as a starting point. And I'm sure that people will be in their replies and be like, it's ridiculous. We're still better than some of these teams. And that's fine. Yeah. But I think in terms of one of those feelings you have to have about it is like fan satisfaction almost. And that wasn't one of the categories. It almost came as a kind of deadpan, this is where we're going to have a cutoff. And so that's why those teams aren't included. But I do think that this is in the right order. Let's assume that Amorim was still at Sporting for this thing. But I think, I went 7-1 here. PSV, Napoli, I think would beat PSV. Bayern, I think would have a decent shot. I don't think there's much between Bayern and Napoli. I think Atalanta would probably beat Bayern, considering what Bayern have done in recent games. Sporting Atalanta would be a great game, as would Sporting Barcelona. And then Liverpool, Barcelona, I think Liverpool just edge. So I think they're vaguely in the right kind of order in that regard. But that's my 7-1 best teams in Europe so far this season.
Lovely stuff, mate. I'm not sure any of those teams are actually scheduled to play each other as it stands. But hopefully we do get some clashes between these lot as we can move forward so we can properly judge them. Liverpool have got that game against Real Madrid coming up soon, though, which will be mouth-watering. And that's one for the Real Madrid fans to maybe start their fight back into a list like this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And with that, I think it's probably time for us to call it a day. So all that's left for me to do is say thank you very much to Mr. Dean Jones.
Mate, well done. That was a great show. Well done for doing all the work. Now you've got to get all this together, produce it all, package it and get it out.
It'll all be out, but it'll all be out by the morning. It always is. It always is.
Well done,
I've been Jack Collins. Thank you so much for listening to this show today. Really appreciated as ever. Sam and Doogie will be back on Friday. They're talking Man City on The Truth. We'll be talking about has Man City's very thin squad depth finally failed them after so many years of success. It's a very, very interesting one. We've just recorded it. I'm looking forward to you guys hearing it as well on Friday. So make sure you're locked in, subscribed and listening to The Truth on Friday. Dean and I will be back next Tuesday. Thank you so much for listening as ever. And we'll see you very shortly. Take it easy, Rank Squad. Peace. Final seconds of the game. A chance to score and the chance has gone begging. If your business's commerce platform keeps missing the target on golden opportunities, get the MVP you deserve. Get Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform revolutionizing millions of businesses worldwide. Whether you're a garage entrepreneur or IPO ready, Shopify is the only tool that you need to start, run, and grow your business without the struggle. Shopify puts you in control of every sales channel. So whether you're selling signed football boots from Shopify's in-person POS system, or you're vending vintage shirts on Shopify's all-in-one e-commerce platform, you are covered. And once you've reached your audience, Shopify has the internet's best converting checkout to help you turn them from browsers to buyers. What I love about Shopify is how, no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control and take your business to the next level. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is truly a global force, powering Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across over 170 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ranks, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ranks to take your business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/ranks.